Hello everyone, it's Glenda and welcome back to my channel Creative Grandma. It's Stitch of the Week time and this week's stitch is number 13. It's called the V-Stitch Mesh. It's a beautiful lacy pattern. Now this sample I change colors every 2 rows. Now with this stitch pattern it has a multiple of 3 plus 5. So you would chain 3 again, keep chaining in multiples of 3. When you get it to the width you want, then you add 5 more chains. So let's take a look at the first sample. It's a very pretty lacy design where you're alternating those V stitches. 1 row of V stitches you work across, and then you work a mesh row, and then you come up and your second row of V stitches are going to be in between the V stitches 2 rows below. Very beautiful pattern, so many possibilities. Now for today's video, I did make 4 different samples so you can really see the difference in what this pattern looks like with different yarns. Now for this sample, I have a lot of ends because I just chose to cut them off because it was just a sample. So when I finished the row, I just cut off the yarn. But this sample was made using Premier Eversoft. This is a beautiful, soft acrylic yarn, wonderful to work with, has a lot of drape. It's 247 meters. It comes in a 5.29 ounce skein, 150 grams. It's 100% acrylic. It's classified as a 4 medium weight yarn. It is machine wash warm, tumble dry. It has passed the standard 100 test, so you know it is safe against harmful chemicals. So this is a wonderful yarn. It is made in Turkey. This is the color red, color number 1138-08. So I used the red. I used yellow, color number 113812, yellow. I used the cornflower blue, beautiful color of blue. This is color number 1138-23, cornflower blue. And then I also used this beautiful green called celery, and this is color 1138-16, celery. Again, I would compare this yarn to Caron Simply Soft. This yarn has a beautiful sheen and it's extremely soft. So again, that is my first sample. Now my second sample is just a smaller sample, but I started making a sample using the Lion brand Mandela Ombre, and this is a beautiful yarn by Lion brand. It comes in a 5.3 ounce cake, 150 grams, 344 yards, 315 meters. It is machine wash and dryable. That's what I love so much. It's 100% acrylic, and it is a number 4 medium weight yarn. This yarn was made in India, and it's a very soft acrylic, very wonderful yarn to work with. I have used this in several of my designs, and I love how it looks. Now, this sample doesn't really represent how beautiful the yarn is because there's many colors in here, but I just wanted to show you how that pattern looks when you're using maybe a self-striping yarn. So that is my second sample. Now my third sample, I just done a basic white. Now I have it on a white table, so it might be harder to see, but let me show you the yarn first. It's just the Premier Basics. It's a number 4 worsted weight yarn. It's 359 yards, 328 meters. It comes in a large 7 ounce skein, 200 grams. It's a very nice soft acrylic yarn. It has been tested and approved against 350 harmful substances. This yarn is machine wash warm, tumble dry normal, and this yarn is made in Turkey. So beautiful, affordable yarn, comes in many beautiful solid shades, and then they also have multicolors. So let's take a look at the sample done in the white. And I love when you do an Afghan in pure white. It just has an elegant look. So again, if you live in a warmer climate and you're just looking for one of those nice, lightweight, but pretty stitch patterns, look how pretty the stitch pattern is. So that is my third sample. Now my fourth sample, I also used the Premier Basics in that solid white, and I also chose a multicolor. So the multicolor skeins come in a little bit smaller skein. It's a 4 medium worsted weight yarn. It comes in a 245 yard, 224 meter, a smaller 5-ounce skein, 140 grams. It's 100% acrylic. It's been tested and approved, and it's a very soft and affordable acrylic. So this is my sample, and on this sample I change colors every 2 rows, and I just carried my ends right up the side. And again, when you put your border on your project, you can just go right over these ends. So very pretty. Maybe if you want to make some dishcloths, maybe if you just want to make a lightweight sweater, an afghan, so many different possibilities with this stitch pattern. And I really think it's pretty when you use a multicolor with a solid color in between. It just really accents those multicolors. So those are the 4 samples I have for you today. So for today's crochet tutorial, I am going to be using the Red Heart Unforgettable yarn. It's a beautiful roving style yarn. It's a beautiful yarn to work with. I absolutely love all the different colorways. Now, when you look on the yarn label, most yarns tell you the recommended hook size. Now, with this stitch pattern, I am going to recommend to drop your hook size down either 1 or 2 sizes, but it's up to you. You can use the recommended hook size, or you can drop your hook down. Now I chose to drop all the way down to a size H8 or 5 millimeter because I don't want real big holes in my V-stitches and mesh. I want it to be a little bit tighter work so they're not real big holes. But it's all up to you. You can use the recommended hook size, or you can drop your hook size down. So again, I am using the Red Heart Unforgettable. This is a number 4 medium worsted weight yarn. And again, all yarns are different. So this may be different than a 4 worsted, like a Red Heart Super Saver might be just a little bit thicker. You might get different results, even though you're using a same 4 medium with the same hook size as I am. So it could be different. So just be aware of that when you're trying to make your samples. Adjust your hook size accordingly to the yarn that you're going to use for this tutorial. So go ahead and grab your yarn, grab your hook, and let's learn how to do this stitch pattern. I already have my yarn attached to my hook, and I just used a double knot. You can attach your yarn in whichever way you prefer. Now remember, the stitch multiple is a multiple of 3 plus 5. So we're going to chain 17. That's the multiple of 3 times 4 for 12, and then we're going to add 5 for a total of 17. So let's begin and chain 17 chains. You're going to yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook, and this creates your first chain. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Continue until you have 17 chains. I'll be back and we'll start row 1. I'm back. I have my 17 chains, and now we're ready to begin row 1. For row 1, we're going to skip the first 3 chain and work a double crochet into this 4th chain from hook. You're going to yarn over, skip the first 3 chain, insert into the 4th chain from hook, yarn over the hook, and pull through that chain. You have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops. You just made a double crochet. You're going to chain 1, and now we're going to work a double crochet back into that same chain. Your V-stitch is made. You worked a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet all into that 4th chain from hook. Now if you're new to crocheting, go ahead and put a stitch marker right into this chain on the right side of that first double crochet made. This is the skip 3 chain. Put your stitch marker right here in the top of that chain, and that counts as your first double crochet stitch. Now we're going to start our repeat. We're going to skip 2 chains and work a V-stitch of a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the next chain, and we're going to repeat that across to the last chain. So let's go ahead and start the repeat. You're going to yarn over, skip the next 2 chain, insert into the next chain, work a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same chain. Your V-stitch is made. So let's do the repeat again. You're going to skip the next 2 chain, double crochet into the next chain, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same chain. Your V-stitch is made. Let's do it again. Skip the next 2 chain, double crochet into the next chain, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same chain. Your V-stitch is made. We have one more repeat to go. You're going to skip the next 2 chain, double crochet into the next chain, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same chain. And that is the end of the repeat, and your V-stitch is made. Now, if you're working on a wider project, then go ahead and continue working the repeat by skipping 2 chain and working a V-stitch of a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the next chain. You're going to repeat that across until you get to your very last chain. Now, to end the row, we're going to work 1 double crochet into this very last chain. Row 1 is finished. Now, if you're new to crocheting, go ahead and put your stitch marker right into the top of that last stitch. And what this does by using those stitch markers is it's going to help you know this is your first stitch when you start the next row. And when you come to the end of your work and you mark that first stitch, it will tell you the last stitch when you're coming back over. So very important that you use those stitch markers when you're first starting to learn how to crochet. Now for this pattern, because we're alternating the V-stitches, it's going to have a 4-row repeat. So rows 2, 3, 4, and 5 is going to be the repeat for the pattern. So let's go ahead and begin row 2. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work. We're going to skip the beginning chain 1 and we're going to go right into the very first double crochet stitch. So if you're not sure where that stitch is, right here is your very first stitch. Just come right at the base of the chain 1, insert under the top 2 loops of that very first stitch, work a single crochet, and then go ahead and put your stitch marker right into the top of that stitch. We're going to skip this next double crochet and we're going to work 1 single crochet into this next chain 1 space. Insert underneath the chain 1 space and we're working our single crochet right around that chain 1 space. Work your single crochet. Now we're going to start our repeat. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2. You're going to skip the next 2 double crochet and work 1 single crochet into your next chain 1 space. Remember, go underneath the chain 1 space and work right around the chain 1 space. Work your single crochet. And that is the end of the repeat. Very simple repeat this row. Let's do it again. You're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 double crochet, and single crochet underneath and around that next chain 1 space. And that is the end of the repeat. Let's do it again. Chain 2, skip the next 2 double crochet, and single crochet underneath and around the next chain 1 space. And that is the end of the repeat. We have 1 more repeat to go. Chain 2, you're going to skip the next 2 double crochet, work a single crochet underneath and around the next chain 1 space. And that is the end of the repeat. So again, if you're working on a wider or longer project, just go ahead and repeat your repeat of chain 2, skip 2 double crochet and a single crochet into the next chain 1 space until you get to the last 2 stitches, which is a double crochet and your turning chain. Now to end row 2, we're just going to skip this next double crochet and we're going to work a single crochet right into the top of the turning chain. So go right into the top of the turning chain. You should have a stitch marker into that chain. Work a single crochet. And row 2 is finished. So you can see your V-stitch row and you can see your mesh row. So now we're ready to begin row 3, and row 3 we're going to be working our V-stitches in between the V-stitches 2 rows below. We're going right into this chain 2 space, which will center it between the 2 V-stitches 2 rows below. So it just alternates that V-stitch in the pattern. So let's go ahead and begin row 3. We're going to start with the chain 2. Now this beginning chain 2 will count as the first double crochet. You're going to turn your work, and now we're going to work 1 double crochet into the next single crochet. Because this counts as the first stitch, you're skipping that first stitch of the row and you're going over to the next single crochet and working a double crochet. Insert into that single crochet, work your double crochet stitch. Now we're going to work our V-stitch into this next chain 2 space. You're going to yarn over, insert underneath and around that chain 2 space, work a double crochet, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same chain 2 space. Your V-stitch is made. Now we're going to start our repeat. We're going to skip the next single crochet and work our V-stitch underneath and around this next chain 2 space of a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. We're going to repeat that across to the last 2 single crochet stitches. So let's go ahead and begin the repeat. You're going to skip the next single crochet, double crochet underneath and around that next chain 2 space, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same chain 2 space. And that is the end of the repeat. Very simple repeat this row. So let's do the repeat again. You're going to skip the next single crochet, double crochet underneath and around that next chain 2 space, chain 1, and then double crochet back underneath and around that same chain 2 space. Your V-stitch is made. Let's do the repeat again. You're going to skip the next single crochet, double crochet underneath and around the next chain 2 space, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same chain 2 space. Your V-stitch is made, and that is the end of the repeat. So we're over to our last 2 single crochet stitches, but if again you're working on a wider project, then you're just going to repeat, skipping the next single crochet and working the V-stitch in the next chain 2 space across your work until you get to those last 2 single crochet stitches. So now, since we're at the end of the row, we're going to finish up by working 1 double crochet in each of the last 2 single crochet stitches. Double crochet into that next single crochet, and then double crochet into the top of the last single crochet. Turn your work, make sure you're going under the top 2 loops, work a double crochet. And again, you should have had a stitch marker right in that last stitch. So again, if you're new to crocheting, make sure you have your stitch marker moved up to the top of that beginning chain 2 and in the last stitch of this row. So now it's time to do row 4. You can see how easy this pattern really is. So let's go ahead and get started and do row 4. For row 4, you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. You're going to skip that beginning chain 1 and you're going to single crochet right into the top of that first double crochet stitch. Insert under the top 2 loops, work a single crochet. Now we're going to start our repeat. We're going to chain 2. You're going to skip the next 2 double crochet and you're going to work a single crochet underneath and around this next chain 1 space. Work a single crochet. And that is the end of the repeat. Very simple repeat. So let's do it again. You're going to chain 2. You're going to skip the next 2 double crochet, insert underneath and around the next chain 1 space, work 1 single crochet. And again, that is the end of the repeat. So we have 2 repeats to go. So let's do it again. Chain 2, skip the next 2 double crochet, insert underneath the next chain 1 space, work a single crochet. And that is the end of the repeat. We have 1 repeat to go. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 double crochet, insert under the next chain 1 space, work a single crochet. And that is the end of the repeat. And when you look at your work, you'll notice that we have 3 stitches remaining. So if you're working on a longer or wider project, then go ahead and continue by chaining 2, skip the next 2 stitches and single crochet into the next chain 1 space, and you're going to repeat that across to the last 3 stitches. So you're going to have 2 double crochet stitches and you're going to have your turning chain. To end the row, we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip the next 2 double crochet stitches, and we're going to single crochet into the top of that turning chain. Insert into the top of that turning chain, work a single crochet. So row 4 is finished. So make sure you move your stitch markers up to the very last single crochet of this row and into that very first single crochet of the row. So now we're ready to begin row 5. We're going to begin with a chain 2 and you're going to turn your work. We're going to skip this beginning single crochet and we're going to work our V-stitch underneath and around this next chain 2 space. Yarn over, skip that first single crochet, insert underneath and around that chain 2 space, work your double crochet. Chain 1, and then double crochet back into that chain 2 space. Your V-stitch is made. Now we're ready to begin the repeat. We're going to skip the next single crochet, double crochet underneath and around that next chain 2 space, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same chain 2 space. And that is the end of the repeat. And we're going to repeat that across to the last single crochet stitch. So let's go ahead and do it again. You're going to skip the next single crochet, double crochet underneath and around that next chain 2 space, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same chain 2 space. Your V-stitch is made, and that is the end of the repeat. We have 2 repeats to go. We're going to skip the next single crochet, double crochet underneath and around that next chain 2 space, chain 1, and then double crochet back underneath and around that same chain 2 space. Your V-stitch is made, and that is the end of the repeat. And when you look at your work, you can see how your V-stitch is centered right between the 2 V-stitches 2 rows below. So we have 1 more repeat to go. You're going to skip the next single crochet, double crochet underneath and around that next chain 2 space, chain 1, and then double crochet back underneath and around that same chain 2 space. Your V-stitch is made, and that is the end of the repeat. So again, if you're working on a wider project, continue by skipping the next single crochet and working your V-stitch of a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the next chain 2 space, and you're going to repeat that across until you get to your very last single crochet stitch. When you get to your last single crochet stitch, turn your work, and you're going to work a double crochet underneath the top 2 loops of that very last stitch. Work your double crochet. So row 5 is finished. So to continue working your pattern, you're just going to repeat rows 2 through 5 for the pattern. So go ahead and continue if you want to keep working on your sample, and repeat rows 2 through 5 for the pattern. I hope you enjoyed today's crochet stitch pattern, and when you look at the samples I made, you can see how many different looks you can get. You can even get more looks by changing colors every row. Maybe putting a row of white for the single crochet chain row in between each colored row. So many different possibilities with this pattern. So thank you everybody for stopping by. Please remember, all of our Stitch of the Week patterns are free patterns. I'll have the link in the description box underneath the video, and you can also go to our website, creativegrandma.net, click on Stitch of the Week, and you can scroll down and download any pattern that we have on the Stitch of the Week page for free directly to your computer. So thanks again everybody, and until next time, happy crocheting.